Hey there, Goa fans. Mark, aka DJ Solitaire, here with episode 11 of Goa Trance Explorations, my series in which I present and discuss what I think were some of the best Goa psychedelic trance productions from the 90s that I remember from way back then. And today, the first time we're presenting this particular solo project, although we have had this artist in a collaboration in one of the tracks previously discussed. And this is Voodoo People, Paul Jackson as the mastermind, a brilliant musician. And this is the first track that I remember hearing of his, even though there was one that was released at least a little bit earlier. And this is Quad Sep, fantastic, really unique production that was released on Blue Room Released's first compilation, Outside the Reactor. And it was the last kicking track out of the 10 that were presented on here. There was a slower track that came afterwards. And it says very enticingly, taken from his forthcoming album on Blue Room Released. The released word in there being quite ironic because that album was never released, sadly. It was assigned a catalog number. There's a spreadsheet that someone I know got, and it had all the numbers assigned of what was supposed to be what. And that included the Voodoo People album was supposed to be their 7th release. And eventually, when that didn't happen, that number was assigned to the first Psychaos single, Science Fiction, and They Tried to Grab Me. Both fantastic tracks, but not a Voodoo People album. He only produced a couple of tracks under that name. He also had a couple as Genetic. Really creative music making, and it's really very unfortunate that an album didn't happen. And sorry to break the news to you, but I met him for the first time in 2012, and he told me at the time that he threw all of his DATs out, his digital audio tapes. So unless those were duplicated somewhere else or other people got copies of some unreleased productions from him, some of this brilliant creativity will have been lost. So we're lucky to have what we do. That Thousand Planets track that I featured of him together with Jyoti as Arcturus, that's a killer, as well as the unreleased track that they produced, Compound. But today we're going to listen to Quad Sep. And I'm just going to clarify the name. It's Quad Sep, S-E-P, not Quad Step. And so actually, just to tell you what the name is all about, it's a 4-step purification process for LSD in which they dissolve and then recrystallize the LSD crystal 4 times. So 4 quad, and it's 4 times separation process that's supposed to reduce impurities. So the sep is from separation. So Quad Sep, that's what it's about. Not Quad Step, which sounds like 4 on the floor, which, you know, for a dance track like this also kind of makes sense. It was published on a compilation once as Quad Step, and a few folks have typed it out that way because, I mean, Quad Step isn't a word that we use a whole lot, is it? So anyway, now you know. This track was mixed at Ian from Cydonia and Semsis's house in Southeast 23 district of London. And Ian at the time was taking care of Martin Freeland's gear while he was away for a month, and Martin Freeland being the name of Man with No Name, who apparently does have one. And Ian just raved about Paul and his music making and said that this was a live take, all on MIDI with an Atari. And he said that classic DP4 phaser. And he said there was no sync on it. So Paul, being the perfectionist, knew exactly how to set things up so that the timing worked perfectly. And this is really a perfect track. I mean, this is really an astounding production. Incredibly creative. Each track by Voodoo People and each track that Paul worked on really just has its unique sound signature. And that was really the name of the game back then. You know, even though he was using Martin's equipment, it doesn't sound like what Martin would produce. His tracks don't all sound the same, but they still have some similar flavors. So if you listen to his, Drop the Bomb track that was on the Tip compilation that came out around the same time, you can hear a few similarities, but it's all unique flavoring and structuring. This is a brilliant track that's actually pretty tough to work into a set because the sounds are quite a bit more forward than they are in a lot of these tracks. The sounds used and the placement, I'd say, if we were recording analog instrument, it would be sound as if like the microphone is a bit closer. So it's a bit tricky to work into a story, and also because of the incredibly creative rhythm to the bass line, which is this unbelievable mantra that just goes over and over throughout the track with just one place where there's a slight variation. It's absolutely incredible. But a super creative track that's very cosmic, has a real tribal feeling to it with that mantra-like effect. With these voices as well, where it really takes on that voice-like quality that I've talked about in several of the tracks that have been featured in the series. So really creative one, and also very short. It's just a few seconds over 6 minutes long, so it's a pretty short one, and yeah, it's a classic. So how about we give this one a listen, shall we? Just gonna line it up. And here we go. That really sounds like voices, and then it comes in really quickly. That really just sounds like this alien voice or this tribal voice. The drum buildup, really interesting sound. And then there's this beautiful spacey sound. Well, you have this very groovy, sort of like tribal sounding mantra-like bass that still sounds like an alien voice. And that simple one note with that great rhythm. There's just very slight shifts to that bass line coming occasionally. And then this is amazing because it's got like a note to it that has also got this real percussive like quality to it, and it's got this dimensional quality where it sounds almost like it's going out. And then this sort of throaty, raspy kind of pattern, starting from above, coming down. Now it starts climbing a little bit. And this is what I've talked about in several other tracks, right? You have these figurations going up and down. Nobody seems to be doing this anymore. Now is this next 8-bar cycle. Now this slight patterning harmonically brings another note or two in there. And it just takes on a shape and a flavor. Now we get that extra little percussive layer in there. Sort of like hi-hats, but again, it doesn't sound like anything terrestrial, right? It just fills in that frequency and has that rhythmic element. We get this kind of, these steps. It's amazing, and notice how that bass line just keeps going. And now we're getting another build-up. Really hypnotic, right? That repetition really gets you into that trancy state. And just like I said before, right? All these different layers playing so beautifully together. Now this build up, now we get something else. Just like this real, again, that celebratory, cosmic, mystical, both, it's like celebratory and almost angst-ridden. Bass line still going. That other layer is that's just opened up this. And another round. Another repetition really creates, again, that zoning, that loss of time and space just while you lose yourself in the music. And now, based on the bass line, then it comes back. And we get this little riff that starts to build shortly. There's that, again, that high-end sub. That's where the bass line just did a little something different. And we get that 3D kind of little harmonic shaker effect. Notice how the rhythm, again, there's all the stuff that varies from the strong beat. With this really raspy kind of quality to it that's like throaty, sort of textured. And this again has this real celebratory quality to it. And this really simple riffs, but they're catchy and they all fit together beautifully. And we go back into that ascending one. And everything's happening in patterns of 4 or 8, 8 or 16 bars. Then that one comes back in. There's another 8-bar cycle, so you're really getting grooved out. Build up. One little note difference up there. All these different frequency levels, right? And that bass line is still going. It's about to wrap up. That signature. Get this climbing. We start building towards the end. That echoing of those last notes, those last sound waves. Holy moly. I mean, that is a monster track. It's so unique with that trance-like mantra bass line that's repeating, that's got that rhythm, it's got that pattern, it sounds like voices, and then you've got the all those different stems, those different lines that are riffing off of that. Massive. I think the first time that I heard this out, and might be the only time in the 90s that I remember distinctly hearing this, was that autumn equinox party in September 95, where Cooney had played the whole night that I spoke about in the first episode when I was talking about Stellium. And I remember that the party started late. Cooney put on the whole DAT. I guess I don't know if they're having issues setting up or whatever, but he put on the whole DAT for the entire Infinity Project Mystical Experiences ambient to start off. And then this was either the first or the second track. I remember among the first tracks he played, there was this one, and there was a Coxbox one from their first album. They're coming, of course. And but I remember hearing this one and saying, oh, okay, let's hear how he mixes it. Not that I can remember how he did, but I think those two tracks might have been pretty close together. The Loads of Flow, I think it was. But I just remember hearing that, and again, in a big system, on a big system in the forest, under the stars, on a mountainside, and it really had that sort of pastime, like tribal, timeless kind of tribal quality, but that futuristic element with the electronic component, as well as that otherworldly element with how those voices sounded. So, absolutely killer track. And there we go. So we're gonna have to try to play this in a set sometime soon. Last time I remember hearing anybody play it, it has a bit too much. Rike played it at ZNA in 2017. When she started her set, by the way, I mean, she started off with Juno Reactors, the ambient track from the, I think it's called Landing from Transmissions. And the second she put on, you know, the first note hit, everybody just kind of perked up and went to the dance floor. And remember, she had this somewhere in the first few tracks, and brilliantly mixed. I was like, ooh, I'm always curious how somebody's going to mix this one. And I'm curious how I'm going to end up mixing it. But anyway, it is a track to be heard and to be played, and Paul Jackson, a musician to be really admired and remembered. And there we go. So I'm going to sign off here, Mark, aka DJ Solitaire. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll leave you now with the complete track Quad Sep by Voodoo People.